This is the crazy shit brain deck I've been working on and playing casually for ages now. As you guys know, I've been playing Invoked Eldlich for literally 2 years, not because I wanted to, but because I had to. Uh, and I have figured out a way to play it that's not nearly as boring as normal summon Alistair, special summon Souls, make Dragoon, Mech of a Pass. This is a lot more fun. You can run a whole bunch of weird techs. You can do a lot of back row hate. You can do a whole bunch of just crazy things. First thing you probably see is I'm running Rainbow Neos. Yep, Rainbow Neos is the centerfold of this deck. Your goal is to OTK on the second turn as fast as possible. If you open Alistair plus any extender, you can OTK through. Well, you can't OTK through hand traps, but you can break almost any board, and depending on what board breaker cards you have, you can usually just OTK or protect your stuff and break boards really easily. So, we'll go into each of those individual tech cards when we get to them, but let's just get started with the profile, and I'll go into the details momentarily. 3 copies of Alistair, standard. 2 copies of Lord. So in this variant, Lord actually has a different purpose other than just being a 35 Chungus you summon off of Sanguine sometimes. You actually honestly want to open this with any spell or trap plus Alistair. Reason being is that if you open Alistair plus Lord and any back row to send off of the Lord in the graveyard, you can make Dragoon, or excuse me, you can make Rainbow Neos plus Makaba, and if you have any other extender, you can always OTK with exactly 8k damage. And I'll show you why in a moment. We're actually only running one real hand trap, and that is Fantastical Dragon Phantasme. The reason being is that you're always blinding second, and yes, you would think that running a ton of hand traps would be more optimal in that, but in this, I have found it's better to run board breaker cards and break the board versus actually preventing the board from being made. There's so many cards nowadays that just allow you to break the board without your opponent be able to respond, and this is like the only real card that allows you to get to them faster because they're all unsearchable. But this allows you to draw into them. Plus, you have like, if I recall, you have 9 cards that just instantly break the board if you draw into them, and I'll show you those in a momentarily. You're still playing the Magician Souls package because you want to be able to get through your traps and get to your other board breaker cards as soon as possible. Except this one's more productive than Phantasme, but this allows you to also protect your cards as well as being a body on the field for turn one, which becomes a lot more relevant when we get into the or when we get in the extra deck. The Garnets, we got the Neos and the Rainbow Dragon. You can honestly run Rainbow Dark Dragon if you want to, just to have a different name and a different attribute as well. Plus, in theory, it's summonable. It's not. It's never. Like I've done it maybe once, and I'll be honest. This one's prettier. I'm not gonna lie. I have this in secret. I have the Ultra Dark, but this one just looks better. 3 copies of Neos Fusion. This is the reason why this deck is so good is because this doesn't have the Red Eyes clause where you cannot summon for the turn. It has the Pot of Duality clause where you cannot spell summon for the rest of the turn. So you can do full combo like Alistair plus Souls to get you to like Barricade Borg and BLS and Verte and all that shit, and Makaba, and then just drop this. Then you have a 45 beater that has a Balinx in the graveyard for its singular protection. Plus, this isn't once per turn in terms of protections, so you can just keep banishing this from the graveyard, and if you mill it off of the Neos, you can protect it again. Or if you have another card that's dumpable off the Souls, that's even going to give you more resources. Uh, 3 copies of Forbidden Droplet. Uh, you could play Dark Ruler over this in this variant. I would not recommend it though, because this not only does deal with effect negation that allows your opponent to not respond, but it is also a way to get over big things like, say, Dragoon, which can be problematic at times. Rainbow Neos is really good at breaking Dragoon, but this does have a problem dealing with things like that if you do not have access to Neos. So, Droplet plus Lord usually can help crack any board, because you can Droplet pitch the Lord, and then any other cards you want to get rid of, and then Lord revive itself, and then swing over anything that's problematic. In particular, Herald of Ultimateness becomes really problematic. So this allows you to deal with that a lot better. Speaking of which, 3 copies of Super Poly. All 6 of these cards are not respond. Your opponent cannot respond to them. And if you have Meltdown up, Neos Fusion becomes a lot harder to deal with as well, because they can't negate the activation and they cannot respond to the summon. This, though, also as well as being able to crack boards, gives you a body that you can either turn into Verte to make the Red Eyes Fusion, or excuse me, to make the Neos. But there's also the Mud Dragon you make most of the time can prevent your stuff from being targeted. So you just call Dark, and then the Alistair becomes a lot more safe. Your Verte becomes a lot more safe. It doesn't protect Neos, unfortunately, but it does allow you to get to the Neos, and if you absolutely had to, you could pop the Neos if you're worried about it getting negated, and then spin all your opponent's cards anyway. And with Droplet, you can get Lord in the graveyard a lot more consistently, so you can actually have access to another 35 beater that you can, that you can kill your opponent with. Then for the boring stuff, 3 Meltdown, Terraforming, 2 Invocation, you know what it is. 3 Eldland. I decided to cut white for this because you don't really need it. It's just a card that doesn't do anything turn 1, and all your cards have to be able to do something turn 1. Or I guess turn 2 in this case, because you're blinding second. For the traps, 3 Sanguine, 3 Conquistador, and then 2 Hawk Arrow. In my Dragoon variant, you usually run 3 of this because the Souls gets a lot more value, plus you can have more targets because you're trying to play the long game. In this variant, you're not playing the long game at all. Your whole goal is to OTK as soon as possible. That's why you want to go second every time, because you have 9 cards that break the board. Neos on itself is 45. If you have Alistair or Lord, you can easily OTK, because you're only 35 damage away. Alistair on its own is 35 damage because you can turn this into Artemis, make Makaba, and then pitch this to make the Makaba 35, plus Makaba's in the gate, which is always cool. And Lord, when it's sent from the field, or when you revive it from the graveyard, it becomes 35. So it's always going to be game because Neos can spin or you can pop the Verte, spin all your opponent's cards, summon, and if you have Lord and Neos on the field, that's exactly 8k damage. Same thing with Alistair. But Alistair's a lot more safe, of course. And yeah, that's it for the main deck. The extra deck is really similar to how you would play it if you're playing the Dragoon variant, just because there's a lot of overlap in terms of the extra deck. The deck in the extra deck is not really super ridiculous. Of course, you're playing the one Rainbow Neos, which is like the only cool, wacky card you're playing. Uh, yeah, I'm just gonna explain what this card does because a lot of folks don't know because this thing is actually as old as hell. So basically, you can pop a monster to spin all your opponent's monsters. You can pop a back row to spin all your opponent's back row, or you can mill a card to spin your opponent's entire graveyard. And it's really versatile against every single matchup. So if you open something like Droplet or if you open Dark Ruler, this is an instant board clear. If you're going against Tri Brigade and your opponent has the board set up, you can crack the board by just swinging over it and then just milling a card and spinning their whole grave. That way, they have to open exactly Fractal, and it limits their options for recovery. Uh, yeah, this thing's insane. Plus, the Balinks, or the Neos Fusion is Balinks and Grave, so if this would be destroyed by battle or card effects, it can be protected. It's not, of course, it's not nearly as towers like as Dragoon is, but the theory is that you're supposed to crack the board and just kill your opponent before they have a chance to crack back. You know what I mean? This is a lot more fun to play at locals, where Dragoon is probably better, to be honest. But this has a lot more fun to do with, or have a lot more things to do with, and it's a lot more fun. Iogdes, you guys know the Invoked package. I play this as a Super Poly target since Bird Up does come up at my locals. Purgatrio, Caliga. If you're going first, if you know your opponent's making you go first, you make Caliga. Otherwise, this is the one of the cards you can actually flex with because if you open Souls, it's the only real way to get to this other than like manually pitching Phantasme, but that's awful, and that always feels awful. So, Stark Venom and Mud Dragon. This is your generic target. This is what you'll usually make first because, say you're going against what's called Drytron, you'll turn off the Beatrice and you'll turn off the Herald, and then you'll make this thing, and then this thing will you can call Dark. It turns itself into a Dark, and then it has a continuous effect where it'll prevent things that are the same attribute as it from being targeted by card effects. Starving Venom is the secondary option. So say you draw into Neos Fusion or you draw into the second Super Poly, or you can actually Verte for Super Poly, and then Verte will make a monster into a Dark, so you can then Super Poly into this with the Verte itself. It's not nearly as effective because you, of course, Super Polying for 2 cards versus 1 card, and one of them have to be not negated, and your opponent can respond to the Verte. But it does come up where you want the second target other than the invoked cards because yeah, it genuinely comes up. So Barricade Borg. This is a generic link to you make after the Verte, and it allows you to recur your resources if you are playing the long game. If not, it just gets Lord in the Grave, or like a Trap in the Grave. Link Spider for turning your traps into effect monsters for Verte, Almirage, and Artemis. I wanted both of these because making Purgatrio does come up if you don't have the ability to make the Lord, or excuse me, if you don't have the ability to make the Rainbow Neos, so piercing through all your stuff does come up. Plus, it's also able to protect Lord, or excuse me, you are protect Rainbow Neos with it. So say you open Souls plus Alistair, you can do the full combo, but instead of making the Artemis with the Alistair, you make the Almirage. Then you go Souls and all that, and then you go ahead and make Makaba, and then you make the Verte. But you keep this on the field. That way, when you summon the Neos, you can on resolution chain this to make your opponent to make this untargetable by your opponent's card effects. So it protects it as well. BLS as a secondary boss monster that is non-targeting, non-destruction removal. This is really slow, but in the matchups where it comes up, it's really, really important. So say you're going in Striker, this is basically an auto win because they can't deal with it. And if you get to 45, it's really hard for them to make access code to deal with it. Because they have to specifically go into the full like access code combo with Celine to get to it, and at that point, they're just swinging over a 45 beater and passing turn. And then, of course, the Verte for dumping Neos Fusion and Rainbow Neos. I'll go ahead and go over the side deck, even though it is pretty much the exact same as the side deck from the Dragoon variant. And then after that, we'll go into a few hand combos and see how it plays. Nibiru, standard, like, we have a lot of Salad and a lot of Rogue at my locals where this actually does come up. 3 Ash, this is the standard hand trap. If you're going in the, depending on what matchup you're going against, say you're going against Drytron, you actually don't put in this, and you don't put in either of these. You just keep the cards you have in. But if you're going against, say, Tri-Brigade, it's a very different matchup. You'll actually side out the, what's called? The Super Polys and put in Ashes, because this can hit Fractal, and Super Poly doesn't really have a lot of great targets for that, other than maybe Mud Dragon, depending on what they put out. But it's specifically if they put out like Appaloosa plus like the Ancient Warrior thing, and then you can Super Poly into Mud Dragon. That's the only time it comes up, and usually they won't make that play after they see your main decking Super Poly. 3 copies of Lancia, same reason. I almost want to play Droll in this, though I don't really have the room for it because, well, I guess I could cut one thing. Like, if I was to cut anything, I would probably cut the Ashes for Drolls, just because, like, it does come up against Drytron, but you already, in this variant of the deck, Drytron isn't super hard if you open any of your blowout cards, and it's just a lot better to play Lancia over the droplets, or excuse me, over the Drolls in Tri-Brigade, or in the Mirror match, for example. We have a lot of Invoked matchups, plus a lot of like Dogmatica stuff and Shadalls, so. More back row hate. This deck does have a lot of monster removal, but not a ton of spell and trap removal. So it does have a chance to getting hit by Mystic Mine, which does suck. That's why I play the Kree Conquistador in the main. That way I have an out to it in the main deck. But given it is really slow. Duster, though, and Cosmics are the best ones. This one gets around Field Barrier, and this one is just blowout against everything if you hard draw it. So you get a secret of this, by the way. Don't bully me in the comments because I have a rare. Everything else in my deck is not common, I swear. And then 3 Dark Ruler. It's pretty standard for the side deck right now. It's more master move or mass negation. If you know you're going second against, like, say, Burt or like a multi-negate board, like, say, well, we have a couple Dragoonity players that are basically just Dragon Link, but with extra steps. This really just wins the matchup. All right, let's see in the side deck, you see in the main deck. Let's go ahead and get to the test hands. All right, so you've seen how the main deck is built. Now let's go ahead and go over just a few random test hands to show how the deck works. And then we'll also do a couple of combos that are just generic 2.5 card combos, or 1 card combo, depending on what you open. So, we're usually going to be blinding second. So with this variant, if I ever want to test hands, what I usually do is I draw a hand of 5 cards, and I draw a hand of 6 cards, depending on what I have. So you open 5, you draw Phantasma, you drop it first, because usually the matchup will favor Phantasma. So, like, see, in the matchups where it's relevant, the Phantasma will always come in, and at my locals, I've never seen a single matchup where Phantasma doesn't come up, except for maybe Guru, but in which case this doesn't matter anyway, because you kind of just auto-win that matchup. You drop Phantasma, draw some cards, you put back the Garnet. You low-key almost want to put back this, just because if you draw the souls, this becomes dead. The souls becomes dead. But this is always live in your hand, so it just depends on if you're feeling lucky or not. I usually just put back the Garnet that matters, because if you draw an Alistair, or if you get your Alistair ashed, you can still make the full combo while keeping the Phantasma on the board. So, it's 5, we draw for turn. Oh, wow, that's sick. Yeah, we just play through literally anything at this point. Except for Droll, I guess. Or even with Droll, we still play through it. Because we just melt down, we get Alistair. If they Droll us now, it doesn't matter, we have Invocation anyway. But if, say, they don't they hit us with the Droll, they can either ash this, or if not, again, we still have it. If we do not get interrupted at all, we search the Invocation, and then we turn this into the or we can actually do either. We can do either Artemis or Almirage. Because we opened the Fleur, we'd have an access to a light monster without having to worry about it. So in this case, I'm actually going to make the Almirage because it's not only a fire, but if you want to use the Phantasme to, um, so if you want to use or if you don't want to use the Phantasme, you can special summon this, then link it off and the Almirage for the Verte. If you do want to use the Phantasme for the link material, you can turn the this and this into the Verte, and then just do the whole combo anyway. Special Flare. Usually I keep the Phantasme just because it's a lot more safe. And then we do Verte, but we don't just stop there. We go ahead and go Invocation. By the way, this is only 1, 2, 3, 4 summons, so this will be our 5th summon. So we are Nibiru proof in this deck. And usually you're pretty solid against Nibiru in this matchup. Or in this variant. Unless you open like specifically the hand that uses Lord instead of the Alistair, you are pretty much Nibiru proof. Then we Invocation, add back the Alistair. So we got the negate for Nibiru if we need it. And then we do Verte effect, paying 2k, dumping the Neos fusion. We'll go ahead and dump the Elemental Hero Neos and the Rainbow Dragon, which I'm pretty sure I passed. And then we'll go ahead and get the Neos. So if your opponent had any interruptions by now, they would have Nibiru'd the Makaba, because if they don't know if you have a monster in hand, they usually won't because they'd rather just hold the Nibiru. But if not, they will imperm target this when I go effect popping this, or if they have the imperm or the Veiler, they would hit this, and then Phantasme just prevents it from being negated because you can just pitch one of your traps. And then you have, if not, you go ahead and use the effect popping the Verte, and then you spin all your opponent's monsters. You have 45, and then swing with this. And then if you do have, if we proceed to damage step, you can Makaba, or Alistair the Makaba, and then just go ahead and have exactly 8k damage here. This is 35 plus 45. Plus this is bonus. So you have 84 damage, I believe, is the total. Or 10-4 damage. So. And then, of course, you have the follow-up with Meltdown, Alistair, and all that. And you have the traps for interruption if your opponent has Battle Fader or something, I guess. Alright, we'll do 2 more test hands just to see if I can get any more of the different combos out, because you can do the same thing if you open Alistair plus the Lord. You don't specifically have to open like Fleur or like any of the or what's called the Phantasme. You just need to have Alistair plus any extender, either be Lord or another monster on the field like Souls, Fleur, or something like that. So we're going first again, or we're going second again. So we'll open 5 cards. We didn't open any Phantasmes or anything, so we'll just go ahead and we're going second anyway. Oh, there we go. We drew the Lord. So we have, this hand's insane. Given this hand does get hit by Ash because you won't have the Alistair to prevent the Makaba, or to prevent the Nibiru. But if your opponent doesn't have it, it's pretty much game over. So we'll go ahead and normally Alistair to play around Droll. We'll get ourselves an Invocation. Yep. And then since we already have access to the Lord, we don't need to use the souls right away. But if we want to get the souls out of the way now, that way we can, because we're assuming we're not getting hit by Droll. They would have ashed here, or then they would have Drolled on Resolution. So we're pretty much safe for the rest of the turn because we know their opponent doesn't have anything. Other than maybe a Nibiru. But we can play around that natively. So, we've already seen what happens if we have an extender on the field, either Souls or the Fleur-de-Lis. But let's see what happens if we have a Lord in hand. So, we'll go ahead, and we know we're going second, so we'll go ahead and turn this into the Artemis. That way we have a light, and we don't have to banish our Lord. But we'll actually go ahead and activate Invocation and not banish the Artemis. We'll banish the Alistair and send the Lord from hand, then summon Mechaba, and then use the effective Invocation, return this back to deck. This is only 3 summons, so we're still under Nibiru. And we don't have, and we can add back the Alistair to prevent the Nibiru. But we now have a Lord engrave, so we can go ahead and either activate Sanguine to get, or excuse me, activate Meltdown to get the other Alistair, or we can set the Sanguine to get the trap. I'm going to go ahead and activate the Meltdown just because I want to get another Alistair in hand in case we need more damage. And then we can get the Alistair, which is here somewhere. There it is. Use Lord effect, sending the Meltdown. Add the Lord to hand special it. Then we can link these 2 off for Verte. And then we can go ahead and do Neos, and then into the Makaba. The Neos Makaba is 8k damage, popping this to spin all your opponent's monsters. But because we open Souls, like this is literally like one of the best hands you can open. Like no cap. If this was like droplets and this was like Super Poly, you'd actually open the best hand in the deck. It plays through almost anything. We can actually go Soul's Effect, dumping Fleur, and we know we're Nibiru proof because we have the Macabre negate. And I believe this is exactly our fifth summon. Or 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, this is 5 because the Alistair was the first summon. And then we can do Effect of Souls, dumping whatever you want to dump. We're going second, so you might want to keep the Sanguine, but because we have Lord, we're almost incentivized to pitch Sanguine, and I'll show you why. Send this and this because we already have Alistair in hand. Draw 2. Oh, we drew the Invocation. Oh, and the third Alistair. Yeah, we were going to have tons of Alistairs. We can turn these two into the Verte, and then Verte give us Neos, and then we can use this. If, say, we for some reason don't kill here, which we probably will because this is 8k plus 10-5, plus if we need to, we can just drop 3 of these for Funyun Rings. And then be honest, even if we didn't want to do that, we could just do this 75 and then just swing for game. So we can pop the Verte, do spinning, and then we can, if we survive, or if your opponent still survives, you can do Sanguine for Conquistador. That way you have Macabre follow up, or you have Macabre to pitch either a spell or a monster, or you have the Conquistador for popping a card on the field. Plus, Neos can't be killed once, so it's more than likely going to survive a turn unless they have something like Unicorn. But with the back row you'll be able to protect it. All right, we'll do one more quick test hand, seeing if we can get to any of those blowout cards like Super Poly or Droplets, just so we can show the power off of those cards. Go ahead. This reshuffle. And open 5, and then we'll see if we draw Phantasme, and then we'll go to 6. 4, 5. We did not open any of our power spells or Alistair or Lord, but we can actually play with this hand, and I'll show you how. So we're going second, so draw for turn. Indication that doesn't really matter. So our hand is fairly strange. We can make Rainbow Neos with this hand, but we do not have the other 35 damage unless we draw it off of Souls, or if we get really lucky off what we, or if we play this correctly, we might be able to get to it. So we already have the Sanguine in hand, so we'll go ahead and do Eldland effect, searching for Conquistador. Usually don't want to actually get Lord here, because you'll get Lord in the graveyard off the land when you send it off of Souls. You'll do Souls effects, dumping Fleur, and then you'll go ahead and use Souls effects, pitching the first Eldland and whatever Splint Trap you want to get rid of. Personally, I would probably get rid of the Hawk Arrow. You can get rid of the Invocation if you want, just because you don't really need it, because if you draw Alistair, you'll have it anyway. But if you want to play through the Ash, if you have it, you'll be able to do that. So I'll go ahead and pitch the Hawk Arrow and draw 2. Phantasme and Conquistador. Yeah, that kind of just doo-doo juice. We'll do land effect to go ahead and dump ourselves a Lord. And then we have Conquistador already, so we'll go ahead and set the Conquistador, send it off of Lord. That. Now, of course, we can make Dragoon here or Verte or whatever, and then just make Neos and spin their opponent's board. Plus, we'll have a fair bit of follow-up, because we'll have 2 live traps in the graveyard. They'll give us 2 more Sanguine, and then you'll have Sanguine plus Conquistador to blow up your opponent's cards. Plus, you'll have a Neos fusion in the graveyard to protect the Neos, and you have a Phantasme to potentially draw into more things that you can allow to play next turn. So, well, let's go ahead and do one more. That one wasn't really a super awesome hand. It was just basically to show you how to play through bad hands like that. Of course, if you're playing the Dragoon variant, that hand's not nearly as bad because you can do Dragoon Pass, which is essentially the same thing. But Neos is funnier, Smile. Alright, we drew 5. We drew Phantasme, so we'll go ahead and do 5 and then drop the Phantasme. Yep, so, we drew Super Poly too. That's insane. Phantasme, draw 2, put back, probably the Invocation. I'm going to go ahead and try to play this hand out without the Alistair, because I think we can actually OTK with this hand. I'll show you how. We'll draw for turn, Meltdown, whatever. We'll just go ahead and say these are blanks, because I think we can actually OTK with this hand. So, first things first, depending on what your matchup is, so if you're going against, say, Drytron, you'll want to draw phase, drop Super Poly. That way they can't have anything in, like, the standby or whatever to deal with it. So you go ahead and pitch the Sanguine, and then you make the Mud Dragon using their Herald of Ultimateness and their Beatrice, or their Mu Beta, depending on what they open with. This. And then still in draw phase, you activate effect Calling Dark. That way they can't target your darks for the rest of the turn. And then we'll do Cursed Eldland, and then use the effect, paying 800, to go ahead and search ourselves a trap card. We are probably just gonna dump it off of the souls anyway, so we'll get a Hawk Arrow, and then we'll do Effect of Souls, dumping Fleur. By the way, it's the dark, so that way they can't hit us with the imperm. Fleur is gonna be in here. And then you'll go ahead and do Souls Effect, dumping the land and the Hawk Arrow. Draw 2. You have Neos Fusion plus draw. Oh, dude, this is insane. Like, not only did we break the board with Super Poly, but this allows us to prevent any board from being made in the future. So if they go ahead and recur the Neo or the Herald, we can negate it again. Plus, this is also productive on your opponent's turn against any matchup. We'll go ahead and Resolution. We'll do Land Effect to dump a Lord. And where is that? There he is. So, you can probably tell, we have access to Verte through either linking off either of these, or this plus this, that way we can keep this on the field. Or, if we make the Verte, and our opponent, say, imprims it, or, well, they can't, because they're under the Phantasma in this, or if they have, I don't know, some like Skill Drain or something, we can still drop the Neos and still have game. Sanguine Effect Engrave to dump, or excuse me, to set any spell or trap. We'll go ahead and set a. We have a Hawk Hero Engrave, so we'll go ahead and set a Sanguine or a Conquistador. Then we'll do Conk Effect, or excuse me, Effective Lord, popping Conk, summoning itself. Usually, I would probably link off. What do we link off here actually? Probably these two, because if we go into Verte, they'll negate the Verte with Imperm, and then we can negate this anyway. But this way, if they don't negate this, and if they have for some reason have a negation for the Neos, we can negate it then, because this is only affecting dark monsters, and Rainbow Neos is a light. So, we'll go Verte Effect, pay 2k, dumping our other Neos Fusion, dumping Rainbow Dragon and the Neos. Go ahead and get ourselves Rainbow Neos, and then we'll do Neos Effect, popping Verte, and then we have all the your opponent has no monsters, and they cannot target our stuff with anything. So the only thing that would realistically deal with this would be Revolt into Omen. But considering that we've already gotten the Neos, it's likely assumable that they don't have the Revolt, depending on whatever the matchup is. So this is usually just game. Got 8k here, plus another 24, so you got 10-4 damage here. Plus, you have droplets, and you have plenty of follow-up with the Neos Fusion. You can pitch off of the droplets, that way you can protect Neos again. And you have plenty of traps in Graveyard to get your effects going, plus 2 more dead cards in hand, and as we all know, we're good Invoked players. We draw Invoked cards. So yeah, that is pretty much it. This deck is really good at breaking boards. Like I said, the thesis of this deck is not to prevent the board from being made, is to straight up let it be made, and then break it in half, and then OTK through it. It's a lot different than any other like mid-range decks you see, especially any OTK decks, because usually with OTK decks you would see, like for Cosmo for example, you would go first, you would make Dark Lady, hopefully have some traps like Mojo or Kalahana to revive Dark Destroyers and pop cards, stuff like that, and then OTK from there. From here, you just literally don't give a shit about whatever your opponent puts up, as long as it's not like 5 back row plus Mystic Mine and a Mono Auto, you're pretty much solid. Anyway, that is it. If you guys have any questions about this deck, I love talking card theory. So go ahead and comment in the comments section down below, and then let's talk, dude. I love talking about decks, especially this one, because this one was a lot of fun to make, and it's kind of like one of the only original decks I've actually made. I mean, I guess that Invoked Eldlich list was kind of original. Oh, what am I talking about? It's Invoked. It's never original. Yeah, so go ahead and talk about me or talk about the deck in the comments. I'd love to chat with you guys. I'm always there. Like, I'm still checking on the comments from like the Eldlich Invoked list I posted like 2 years ago or something crazy like that. God, I need to record more. Anyway, I'll see you guys later. Have a good one.